Welcome to Shahnameh, Book of Kings. Today we begin with the tale of Zal and Rudabeh. Now, one day, Zal decided to travel among his kingdom, and he set out with an entourage of like-minded companions. They traveled toward India, Kabol, Dambar, Morg, and Mai. They built palaces as they went, and called for wine and musicians to entertain them. They spent liberally, driving away all thoughts of sorrow, as it was the way of those who live in this fleeting world. They reached Kabul, traveling in splendor, laughing, and with lots of happiness in their heart. The king there was Mehrab, a shrewd, wealthy man who was fortunate in his dealings. He was tall and elegant as a cypress tree. His face was as fresh as springtime, and his gait was like a pheasant's. His heart was wise, his mind prudent, his shoulders were those of a warrior, and his mind that of a priest. When he heard of Zal's approach, he left Kabul at dawn, taking treasure, richly compassioned horses, slaves, and various other kinds of wealth, such as gold, coins, rubies, musk, ambergris, brocades woven with gold, silks, and somnite, a crown encrusted with royal jewels, and a golden torque set with emeralds. Hearing that a splendid welcoming party was coming to greet him, Zal went forward to receive them and entertain them with all due ceremony. He set Mehrab on a turquoise-studded throne. A marvelous feast was spread before the two princes, and as the wine steward poured their wine, Zal took stock of Mehrab. He liked what he saw, and his heart was attracted by the king's behavior. When he stood up from the table, Zal saw how well built he was, and said to his courtiers, "What finer man binds on a nobleman's belt than this?" One of the courtiers spoke. "In Purda, and unseen by anyone, he has a daughter lovelier than the sun. Lashes like raven's wings protect a pair of eyes like wild narcissus hidden there. If you would seek the moon, it is in her face. If you seek musk, her hair's its hiding place. She is a paradise arrayed in splendor, glorious, graceful, elegantly slender." Zal's heart began to be at peace, and good sense departed from him. Night came, and Zal sat plunged in thought, unable to sleep or eat, for thinking of this girl whom he had never seen. When the sun's sword touched the mountain tops, and the world's surface became the color of pale topaz, Zal held court, and Mehrab came to visit. As he approached, a cry of "Clear the way!" went up, and Mehrab entered like a tree that bears fresh fruit. Zal was pleased to see him, and made much of him, honoring him more than anyone else present. He said, "Ask me for anything you wish, be it thrones, seal rings, swords, or crowns." Mehrab replied, "My king, whom all obey, you are noble and victorious, and I have only one wish from you, one that will not be hard for you to fulfill, which is that you come as a happy guest to my palace, which you will illuminate like the sun itself." Zal answered, "This is not advisable. Your palace is not a place for me. Sam would not approve, and neither would King Manucher, if he heard of it. If I became drunk with wine in the house of someone who worships idols, I'll listen favorably to anything you ask." Mehrab made his obeisance before Zal, but in his heart he called him a faithless wretch. He strode from the court, calling down blessings on his host. Zal watched him go, and praised him according to a custom, but because they were of different faith, he kept his remarks to a minimum. None of the Persians looked kindly on Mehrab, since they considered him to be an idolatrous demon. But when they saw Zal speaking to him in such a friendly fashion, they one by one said favorable things about him. In particular, that his women's quarters housed someone who was incomparable in her stature, beauty, dignity, and all that pertained to loveliness. Zal's heart was suddenly seized by the madness of longing. Wisdom fled from his mind, and love flourished there. The chief of the Arabs, the Lord of Righteousness, had said of such matters, "Whilst I'm alive, my partner is my horse. Beneath the heavens my life will take its course. I'll never marry to hear wise men speak of me as one who's wanton, frail, and weak. Zal's heart became weary with the thoughts that beset him. His heart writhed at the thought of the gossip that was said of him and the shame his passion might bring. And so the heavens turned, and Zal's heart became filled to the brim with love. At dawn, one day, Mehrab went to his women's quarters, where he saw two sons. One was his wife, Sindak, and the other his lovely daughter, Rudabeh. Now, their apartment was decked out like a colorful spring garden, filled with sweet perfumes and elegance. Mehrab was astonished at how lovely Rudabeh had grown, and he repeated the name of God over her as a blessing. She was like a cypress tree topped by the full moon, a moon that was crowned by her musky hair. She was dressed in brocade and jewels, and she seemed like a paradise, filled with everything desirable. Sindak said to her husband, "May evil never harm you. Open your lovely lips and tell us where you have been today. Tell us what kind of person Sam's son is, this visitor who has an old man's hair. Does he belong on a throne or in the nest where he was missed? Does he seem like a man at all? Does he follow in the footsteps of famous men who do noble deeds?" Mehrab replied, "My silver cypress, no hero in the world is worthy to follow in Zal's footsteps. You'll see no other horseman to compare. With Zal he has no equal anywhere, as ruddy as the pomegranate flower, youthful, and with a young man's slug mid-power, fierce in revenge, mid in the saddle, he's a sharp-clawed dragon to his enemies. Possessed of mammoth strength, a lion's guile, his arms are mighty as the flooding Nile. He scatters gold when he's in court, and when he's on the battlefield, the heads of men. He has one fault, which after all is so slight no one remarks on it. His hair is white." Rudabah had 5 kind of Turkish slaves who were her confidants. She said to these shrewd girls, "All 5 of you are my friends and know my heart, and I wish all of you luck in your lives. I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm in love, and my love is like a wave of the sea that's crusting up towards heaven. My bright heart is filled with thoughts of Sam's son, and even when I sleep, he never leaves me. The place in my heart where I should feel shame is filled instead with love, and day and night I think of his face. Oh, now help me. Who do you think? What do you advise? You must think of some scheme, some way to free my heart and soul from this agony of adoration." Her slave girls were astonished at this behavior from someone of Rudabah's rank. They rose up like Ahriman and answered her forthrightly. "You are the crown of all the princesses in the world, praised from India to China, the jewel of your father's household. No cypress has your stature. The Pallades are not as lovely as your face. Your portrait has been sent out from Kunajay to the king of the western lands. Have you no shame? Have you considered what this would mean to your father? Do you want to embrace someone who has driven your father from his embrace, someone who has brought up by a bird in the mountains, who by his byword among men for his strangeness? No one has ever been born from his mother as an old man, and such a person will not have descendants. How can a young girl whose lips are the color of coral want to marry an old man? This world is filled with love for you, and your portrait is found in every palace. Your face and hair and form are so lovely that the sun itself should descend from the fourth sphere to be your husband." When Rudabah heard their words, her heart beat fast like a fire fanned by the wind. She shouted at them in fury, screwing up her eyes, her face trembling, her forehead filled with frowns, her eyebrows bent like a bow. "It's pointless to listen to such foolish talk. I don't want the Chinese emperor, nor the king of the West, nor the king of Persia. Samsung. Zal is the man I want. With his lion-like strength and stature, he is my equal. Call him old or young, he will be body and soul to me." The slave girls were taken aback by her response and said with one voice, "We are your slaves. Our hearts are filled with our love for you. We await your orders, from which nothing but good can come." May 100,000 like us sacrifice their lives for you, and may all wisdom in the world come to your aid. May your black-eyed servants be filled with humility, and their faces blush with shame. If we must learn magic, we will learn it, flying with birds and running with deer, sealing our eyes with spells and incantations, so that we can bring this prince to your side. Rudabah's lips smiled, and turning her saffron cheeks to them, she said, If you bring us to one another's arms, and keep the promise you have made, you will be planting a noble tree whose daily fruit will be rubies. Then her slaves set about thinking of some ways to help their helpless princess. They dressed themselves in roomy brocade and wore chaplets of flowers in their hair. The 5 of them went down to the river bank, and in their tints and scents they were as lovely as the spring. It was the month of Farvidin, when the sun moves into Aries and the year is renewed. Zal had come to the riverside to hunt. On the opposite bank, the slave girls paused to pick pink flowers, and their own faces were like flowers as they gathered the blossoms in their arms. Zal watched from his throne and asked, Who are those girls who seem so fond of flowers? A courtier answered, They are from Mehrab's palace. His daughter, who people call the Moon of Kabul, has sent them to gather flowers. Zal went closer to the girls and asked for his bow. On foot he approached the ducks swimming in the river and drew back the string from his bow. He watched for when one of the birds flew up from the river and then loosed an arrow on it. He brought it down in mid-flight, and its blood dripped into the river, reddening the water. One of the girls said to Zal's servant boy, who went to fetch the bird, Who is that lion of a man? What kind of man is he who shot that arrow, and whose king is he? Who would dare oppose such a warrior? We haven't seen a finer knight than he is, or a better shot with a bow. The handsome boy bit his lip and said, Don't talk about the king like that. He's the king of Zabolestan, Sam's son, and his name is Zal. The heavens don't turn above a finer knight, and the world will never see anyone more noble than he is. The girl smiled at the handsome boy and said, Don't be so sure. There's a princess in Mehrab's palace who is finer by far than your king. Her stature is like a teak's tree, her color is that of ivory, and she wears on her head the crown of musk that God has given her. Her eyes are like 2 dark narcissus, her eyebrows are like a bow, her nose is like a silver reed, her mouth is small, like the contracted heart of a desperate man, and her hair, it falls in ringlets to her feet. Her mouth is so tiny that her breath can scarcely find passage there, and there is no one in all the world that is equal to her beauty. We have come here so that her ruby lips can become acquainted with the lips of Sam's son. The boy left them and returned to Zal, who asked him what the girls had said that had made him smile so much and show his silver teeth in his blushing face. The boy told Zal what he had heard, and the hero's heart grew young at his words. He said to the handsome page, Go and tell the girls to wait for a moment, so that they can take jewels with them as well as flowers. He asked for gold and silver coins and jewels from his treasury, as well as 5 sets of clothes made of golden brocade. He told the boy to take these to the girls, but to do so secretly and tell no one, and to say to them that they shouldn't go back to the castle, not yet, because he had a message he wished to send. Slaves took the gifts to the girls and told them what Zal had said. One of the girls said to the page, Words never remain secret for long, unless they are only between 2 people. With 3 people, they are no longer a secret, and 4 is a crowd. Tell your prince that if he has a secret to impart, he should tell me face to face. Then the girls said to one another, The lion has walked into the trap. Now, Rudabeh will have her heart's desire, and Zal shall have his, and everything has turned out for the best. Zal's black-eyed treasurer, who was also his confidant in this matter, returned to the prince and told him all he had heard from the girls. Zal made his way to the bed of flowers on the river bank in hopes of arranging a meeting with Rudabah. The prince's slave girls presented themselves and made their obeisance to him. Zal questioned them about their mistress, asking about her stature and beauty, her manner of speaking, her wisdom, wanting to know if she was worthy of him. Tell me everything, he said, and see that you don't try to deceive me. If I find that you've spoken honestly, you'll be honored and rewarded. But if I find you've lied, even in the smallest detail, I'll have you trampled beneath the feet of my elephants." The girls' faces turned the color of red juniper berries, and they kissed the ground before him. One of them said, "No noble mother has ever borne a man as fine as Sam, not in looks or stature, knowledge or purity of heart. And who is there to compare with you, brave lord, with your massive frame and lion strength? And thirdly, there is Rudabah, whose face is like the moon, whose body is like a silver cypress tree, adorned in tints and scents. She is a rose, a jasmine flower from head to foot, and her face is as radiant as a canopus shining above the Yemen. From the silver dome of her forehead, her hair cascades in fragrant coils, looped with rubies and emeralds down to her feet. Her curls are links of musk entwined one with another, her 10 fingers and silver reeds steeped in civet. You will see no idol as beautiful as she is in all of China. The moon and the Pleiades bow down before her." The prince spoke urgently but sweetly and gently to a slave girl. "Tell me some way that I can reach her. My heart and soul are filled with love for her, and I long to glimpse her face." The slave girl answered, "With your permission, we shall return to the castle. We are all smitten with your glory, your handsomeness, and your words' sincerity. We shall report everything, change nothing. We shall bring her musky head into your trap. We shall bring her lips to the lips of Sam's son. May the prince come to the castle walls with a lariat. He can loop it on the battlements, and so like a lion happily pursue her prey." The girls went on their way, and Zal returned to his camp. As he reached it for the night, it seemed to him that a year had passed by. The girls reached the castle, each of them holding 2 posies of flowers. When the doorman saw them, he grumbled. Impatient words came from the troubled heart. "This is no time to be gadding about from the castle. I'm astonished at your behavior." The girls responded in just as lively a fashion. "Today is different from any other day. There are no demons lying in wait among the blossoms. Spring has come, and we have picked flowers. We have gathered these hyacinths." The doorman said, "This is no day to be doing such thing. Zal's tents are no longer in Zabolestan. Didn't you see the king of Kabul ride out from the castle to greet him? If he should come across you with these flowers in your hand, he'd knock you to the ground there and then." The girls entered the castle and went to the princess, where they sat to tell her their secrets. They showed her the brocade and jewels Zal had given them, and Rudabah asked about every detail of their encounter. "Oh, how did your meeting with Zal go?" she asked. "Has people's gossip exaggerated his qualities, or is he even better when you see him face to face?" The 5 girls, they all began to speak at once, vying for who should tell the princess what they had seen. "He's tall like a cypress tree. Everything about him is elegant, and he radiates royal glory. The colors he wears, the perfumes, his height and build. He's a knight with a slim waist and noble chest. His eyes are like pitch black narcissus. His lips are like coral. His cheeks ruddy as blood. His shoulders and trunk are like a lion's. His thighs are massive. His heart is learned, and he has a king's dignity. His hair is completely white, and this is his only fault, and really it's nothing to be ashamed of. His curls are like silver links, coiled together about his face, which is the blossom of the Judas tree. You'd think he's just as he should be, and if he weren't like this, he wouldn't inspire such love. We told him he could see you, and he went back to his camp with his heart filled with love. Now you must ready to receive your guest, and tell us what answers we should take back to him." The princess said to her slaves, "Then he's different from what people say? This Zal, who was brought up by birds and was a youth, who had withered away with the head of an old man, has become as lovely as the blossom of Judas tree, tall and elegant, with a handsome face from head to foot, a hero? So you boasted about my face to him, and reaped the reward for your words?" As she spoke, her lips broke into smiles, and her cheeks blushed the color of pomegranate blossoms. The slave girl said, "But now get ready, because God has granted your desires, and we pray that everything will turn out well." Rudabah's palace was as pleasant as springtime, and on its walls there were portraits of famous men. She had one of its rooms decorated with Chinese brocade, and she placed golden trays heaped with agates and emeralds there. Then she mixed wine, musk, and ambergris together, and decorated the area with violets, narcissus, the blossoms of the Judas tree, branches of jasmine and hyacinths. The drinking vessels were of gold set with turquoise and held rose water. Rudabah's face was as radiant as the sun, and the scents in her room rose up to the sun's sphere. When the shining sun set the doors to the private quarters in the castle were locked and the keys hidden away, one of the slave girls went to Zal and said, "Everything is ready, come." The prince set off for the castle with all the haste and anxiety of a man going to meet his beloved Rudabah, went onto the roof and stood there like a cypress tree topped by the full moon. When she saw Zal in the distance, she called out to him, "Welcome, bold young man. God's blessings be upon you, and may you tread on the heavens. I wish my slave girls happy hearts, because from head to foot you are, as they described. But you have walked here from your pavilion, and I'm afraid your royal feet have been irked by this." Zal heard her voice and looked up, caught sight of her face. The roof shone with its light, and the earth glowed like a ruby. He answered her, "Heaven's blessings be upon you. Your face is as lovely as the full moon. How many nights I have passed gazing at the stars, crying out to God, asking that he grant me a glimpse of your face. Now your voice and your sweet words have made my heart happy. But find some way for us to meet. How can I stay down here when you are up in the battlements?" Hearing his words, she loosed her hair, which cascaded down, tumbling like snakes, loop upon loop. She said, "Come, take these black locks which I let down for you, and use them to climb up to me." Zal gazed in astonishment at her face and hair and said, "This would not be just. May the day never dawn when I strike at my soul like this, thrusting my spear into a wounded heart." He took a lariat from his page, looped it, and hurled it upwards without saying another word. The lariat caught on the battlements, and Zal quickly climbed up its 60 cubits. As he stepped onto the roof, Rudabah made her obeisance before him, then grasped his hands in hers. As if they were in a drunken stupor, they clasped hands and descended from the roof to Rudabah's golden chamber, which glowed like a paradise. Rudabah's slave girls stood before the Ori, and Zal stared in wonder at her face, her hair, her stature, her splendor, her bracelets, her necklace and earrings, and her brocade dress woven with jewels like a garden in spring dotted with flowers. Her cheeks were like red tulips surrounded by jasmine. Her face was surmounted by curl upon curl of musky hair. A sword belt across his chest, and wearing a diadem of rubies, Zal sat in princely splendor beside this glorious moon of beauty. For a while there was nothing but kisses, embraces, and wine. But then Zal said to Rudabah, "If Manuchair hears of this, he will not agree to it, and Sam too will be loud in his oppression. But I despise their opinions, and I am ready to die if I need be. I swear by Almighty God that I shall never break faith with you. I shall pray before God as his slave, asking that he wash all anger and thoughts of vengeance from Sam and Manuchair's hearts. God will grant my request, and all the world will know you as my wife." Rudabah replied, "And I too swear before God, and may he witness that I say that no one shall be my master but Zal, the world's hero, the crowned prince on his throne, the lord of beauty and royal splendor." From moment then to moment their desire gained strength, and wisdom fled before love's fire. Passion engulfed them, and these lovers lay entwined together till the break of day. So tightly they embraced. Before Zal left, Zal was the warp, and Rudabah the weft. Of one cloth, as with tears they said goodbye, and cursed the sun for rising in the sky. Zal let himself down from the battlements and made his way back to his army's tent. And now I stop my tale for today, but I'll be back tomorrow with more, so much more. Till then.